What's going on? I'm Mike Fancher, and welcome to this episode of the MindFit Method podcast. All right, guys, diving right in today, and I am so excited. So Angela is with me on the podcast today, and one of Angela's close mentors is actually one of my dream mentors. So this guy is a mentor of mine. He just doesn't know it. And Angela, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, you have an incredible background. And honestly, as I was really looking into the background that you have, the amazing story that you have, it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes, which is from your mentor, Grant Cardone. And he once said that no one's going to come to your house and make your dreams come true.
Hmm.
You literally have a journey in which you were living in Section 8 housing to leading a team to $2 billion in the sales world. What were some of the pivotal moments that propelled this transformation? And really, how did we get here?
Yeah. So, for a long time, I didn't like to share my story. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me or anything like that. I wanted them to see what I accomplished today. But what I find is it's very powerful when you know where you came from, right? And so, being a survivor of childhood poverty, I was always fascinated by money. And I thought that the more I learn about money, that it would just solve every problem. But as we know, that's not the case. And so I just took the time to really be a student, to learn about money, to learn about investing. And I had to change my mindset. And I will tell you, it's still something that I work on every single day. But I have to think about money as a tool instead of some imaginary thing that's going to make my life so much better. Instead, I wanted to learn how to use this tool so that I could have a better life, a financially free life. And just taking 25 years still of studying it and implementing it today and now teaching it to other people has been a lifelong journey. And I know it's never going to stop. So just making sure that I'm a student always is the first thing that I always think about.
Now, when you kind of made that shift, when you grow up in a poverty type situation, it can be really, really difficult to say, this isn't me. And I think a lot of people have that idea of, I know there's something more out there for me, but I don't know how to get there. I don't know where to start. I don't even know what steps to take. And I hear that in so many parts of life, whether people talk about weight loss, starting a new diet, writing a book, doing a podcast, or talking about money. And money is one of those things that everybody wants it generally, right? Everyone wants money. But when you start having the discussion with money with them, it can be very, very uncomfortable. In your experience, what are some of the first steps that someone should really take to kind of shift their money mindset to start attracting wealth?
Yeah. So the first thing I say is think about your childhood. Grab a pen and a piece of paper and what was taught to you? What did your parents say? What did your environment look like? And what you probably don't understand is all of those very early beliefs are with you today subconsciously, and you're making decisions based on that childhood thought. And so when you first become aware of what were you taught and what's not true for you today, what do you need to change in that subconscious mind? Then that will help you kind of open your eyes to those opportunities. And I know it sounds kind of silly because, we're just thinking about teaching our brain, but that's what you have to do is you have to reprogram your brain. You have to get rid of some of those old thoughts that are no longer your truth today to allow new thoughts to come into your brain. And when we think about money, it can be a scary thing, but what I learned early on too is I just want to surround myself with people who know more than I do. I know that I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room. That's the room that I want to be in. And I want to have mentors around me that are doing things that I haven't yet accomplished. And I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not going to be like a time vampire and suck away a bunch of time from someone. I'm going to try and help them in any way I can in exchange for the information that they're giving me. But really that understanding that early mindset is the only way that you're going to be able to change it. Because if you don't know what's going on subconsciously and what you learned, then there's no way for you to exchange that and put a better thought or a better idea in front of it.
I think today, especially because of the Instagram perfect world that we live in, right? Everyone's so worried about what their steps or their journey is going to look like. I just saw a quote from Alex Hermosi today as I was scrolling through threads or whatever I was on. And I believe his quote was, many people fear rejection more than they fear mediocrity. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that is really good because we're
Mhm.
so worried about what everyone else is going to think, right? Which I think puts us in this risk averse world. We see it with people that, I mean, Robert Kiyosaki talks about it all the time in Rich Dad and Poor Dad, right? People want stability, they want security, yet those are actually the things that generally hold them back. They're the things that are not taking them where they want to go. Let's dive it in a little even further than just growing up in poverty and, growing really the teams that you've grown and being able to do the sales that you've grown. As a woman who has shown up, you've performed, you've excelled in today's financial space. Let's talk a bit about other women because I think then you bring in even another level of, in many cases, insecurity when it comes to talking about money.
Mhm.
How do you encourage women to strive to do some of the same things that you've done and get out of that comfort zone?
Yeah, as women, we are, and I think as people in general, we're so willing to help each other, but we don't want to ask for help. And so
Mhm.
when you think about that for a moment, you have people in your life who want to help, but you don't want to ask them for help. So who is that hurting? It's just hurting yourself. So understanding that we are a culture of people who actually want to help each other for the most part, when you kind of think about it that way, someone's there waiting for you right now. You just have to ask. And so my big philosophy too is I'm going to ask because the answer is no whether or not I ask. So I might as well ask and hope that I'm going to get that yes, hope to get to that mentor, ask questions, become a very curious person. And even as a woman, I give a lot of advice to married women. I was married for a long time, had a very successful marriage for a long time, but many women defer all of that decision making to the man because back in the days, right, the man used to run the household, he used to work, she used to stay at home, and don't even get me started on this whole trad thing that's coming back out. And I don't know if you know anything about that.
No.
But ask questions. And it could be something very simple that you ask. If you're married, you just ask your husband, hey, if you weren't here tomorrow, I need to know where our money is and what your wishes are. And that kind of opens the conversation. So he's not feeling like, oh, is she looking to divorce me? Is this why we're talking about money right now? No. Just need to know, what do you have and how can I help you? And really make money a married thing if you're married. But if you're single, you have to know your finances. You have to know where your income is, your expenses is. You need to know what your risk tolerance in investing is. You need to be planning for retirement because it will happen someday and you can't get a loan when you're in retirement. So just taking it step by step and just little information at a time, implement and action it, and then continue to learn. You don't need to know everything about all investing, but get to a place where you're comfortable so that you actually know what your financial foundation looks like and you can be confident in where you're at in life and where you want to go.
I love that. I love that. I know you talk a lot often about budgeting. And I had a guest on a couple months ago, Rob Tracy, who's an incredible fitness coach, but also a great business consultant. He's a great speaker. And he talks quite a bit about, it was a completely different way for me to look at something. He started talking about managing your consumption. And instantly, when you think consumption, you think calories, right? You think on the nutritional side, what am I taking in? What are my macros? All that crazy stuff. He took it to a new level. And he actually took it to, let's talk about consumption of time and consumption of media, meaning social media, the time that we're spending on technology. And I feel that's a side of budgeting that we don't think about, right? We tend to think about budgeting just from a standpoint of finances. And most people have no idea how they spend their money. They know how they make their money because the direct deposit goes in every 2 weeks if they, have the 9 to 5. They have no idea how they spend their money. But ever since he said that to me, it really made me think that if you really want to master budgeting, even from a financial standpoint, if you think about what you consume in all other aspects of life, it's an interesting way to approach budgeting. Give me some ideas of how do you generally approach budgeting, really without sacrificing the things that you truly love the most?
Yeah, but understanding what that is. So I'm a paper person. Go into your credit card, go into your bank statements, print out the past 3 months. You want to know where your money is going? You've got to put it in your face. And once it's in your face, most people are like, oh my God, I spent that much on Starbucks or gas or going out, whatever it is. I recently did a subscription challenge on my Instagram where I challenged people for 7 days to cancel one subscription per day and then go 30 days without it. and see, do you really need that in your life?
Mm.
But like you're talking about time consumption, I don't have Netflix, Hulu, ESPN, Disney, none of those things because I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to spend my time in the evening watching TV. I'd rather be on YouTube investing in my education or reading a book, which I know I'm super nerdy, but I'm choosing a different way because it's giving me information which helps me to create more income, which means I can make a bigger impact on those people around me. So yeah, I really agree with that 100%. When you see what you're spending your money on, what you're consuming, then it's in your face. And that's when you start to take action because you get mad at yourself and you're like, oh, I wasted money on this. Well, you flushed it down the toilet. I don't want you to do that. So let's take a look and see what you're really spending money on.
Love that. Talk to me about a little bit. I've heard this quote a lot lately that it's actually easier. I want to see if you agree with it or not. I'm looking for your insight on this. It's easier to make $10,000 than it is to save it. Talk to me a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because people don't want to realize what they're actually spending money on. Like you said, we don't know what we spend money on. I think it's easier to make the money, yes. And for me, most financial problems can be solved by making more money, not necessarily taking away money, but finding a habit or something fun that you like to do. People think, I don't know how to make extra income. And I start asking them questions about what do you do? What do people ask you about? And they think that these things are so simple. For example, I hate cooking. So if I had a dinner party at my house, I'm ordering food or I'm ordering someone to cook it for me, right? But someone else could probably say that that's their skill set or it's easy for them. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's easier to make money because people don't want to cut things out of their life. They feel like it's depriving themselves when they stop spending money, but really it's just shifting it to something that makes more sense for you.
You had an amazing story of being able to go from almost $0 in the bank, if I understand correctly, to about $1 million in just 4 months. So when people hear things like that, they're thinking, oh my gosh, it sounds like a get rich quick scheme because people don't understand like the compounding power of money when you start to learn how to use it, learn how to make it. And I always find it interesting that people have the ability, you kind of just touched on it. People have the skills to do things, whether it's a side hustle or starting their own business, to do things that they already love to do, that they're very good at, that their friends all know that they're good at. You once said that you can actually turn your own personal database into dollars. Talk to me a little bit about this because that's a fascinating concept.
Yeah. And so I think this is the power behind podcasting, right? Is you already have this existing database and they trust you with something. They're in your database because they either bought a product or bought a service or reached out to you for some type of information. So what can you build on from that? And so for me, it was podcasting. I have this extensive database and I want to teach people information. And now that I've got this big enough reach, we can charge people to come on the podcast. We can advertise your business on the podcast. I can have guests on that can pitch their businesses. And so there's so many ways to create income from that existing database by just adding on one more service, one more product, but really coming from value and understanding who those clients are that are in your database. What is it that they might need in their life that you can help them with? And with the advancement of AI and technology today, there's just so many ways that we can create products and services that those clients need, but they don't know that they need it until you've created it and
Right.
then hand delivered it to them and said, hey, have you thought about this? Or is this a pain point for you? Or do you struggle here? I've got an answer for you. Here it is. And then you're able to capitalize on people who already know and trust you.
Right. I think people get so stuck in that idea that if they're going to start a business, they're going to start a side hustle before they can do anything. It's got to be perfect, right? It always goes back to that Instagram perfect. And I laugh because if you look at arguably, I think it just changed a little bit because Jeff Bezos jumped up, but arguably Elon Musk is the richest person in the world. He's actually the king of failure, right?
Mhm.
He talks about products. He's been talking about the Cybertruck for 2 years. And his presentation of the Cybertruck when he got on stage and he threw a metal ball at the window that's supposed to be bulletproof and it
Mhm.
breaks right on this huge stage of opportunity to kind of sell this product. And his response was just like, ah, crap. All right, well, it is what it is. But that silly thing propelled the Cybertruck into 200,000 pre-orders before anyone could even blink. And I think people, if they just took those steps to say, all right, you know what? I'm going to do this for one person. So if it's cooking, right? I'm really good at cooking, which I am not. My wife will totally vouch for that. But if I was really good at cooking, to be able to say, all right, you know what? I'm going to go cook for one person. I'm just going to, we think, how can I turn this into $1 million business? Make one sale, right? Just make that first thing and be able to get it out there. Realize it's not going to be perfect. Before we even started recording, you and I were talking about podcasting, and my first 10 episodes were in my car. And if you listen carefully, actually, you don't even need to listen to it that carefully. You can hear the cars going by. You can hear people beeping at me. If you listen really hard, I think on episode 4, you can hear someone yell at me because I probably cut them off while I was recording. So it's not going to be perfect, but you just have to do it. You got to get those reps in. And it reminds me of, again, I brought up Alex Hermosi before, but have you heard his story about the pottery class?
Hmm. Yeah.
Love this. You just got to get those reps in. So for those of you who haven't heard it, essentially a professor in a pottery class split the class up into 2 groups. And one of the groups, he said, you need to make only a single perfect clay pot. And the other group had to make as many pots as possible in the time frame that was allowed. And here's the crazy thing. The group of people that had to make massive numbers of pots actually had the best pots because they had so many reps, had so many times to get it right. You're not going to be perfect, and it's okay. That's even with like budgeting or anything, right? You're probably not going to do it perfect at first. You just keep tweaking it and you just keep making it a little bit better.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I love that how you say that. If you're gonna have failures or, care about rejection, make it public. And the more times that you make it public, people can relate to you. They feel you're authentic. And then that builds that trust factor because we're all gonna make mistakes. And if we make mistakes and if we laugh at ourselves first and then just kind of put it out there, that helps grow your audience too, so that more people are starting to follow you, to know more about you and your
yes.
business and just being like that authentic person. I like putting out funny videos. I had a spider video the other day. I couldn't change my water filter in my fridge, which has absolutely nothing to do with money because that's what I talk about. But I'm throwing out these like little funny things because I'm a real person and I definitely make mistakes and I have failures. And I think the more that you can put it out there, the less afraid of that rejection or failure you become. And then it just helps you to, not perfect, but make your business better because you are putting yourself out there and allowing for yourself to have mistakes and to give yourself grace that it's okay. I'm just a regular person too.
Exactly. I think humor is one of those things. It's just like the lost language. So many people get humor, and especially in that video world today, where even if someone doesn't speak the language, if they see someone running away from a spider or doing those things, like it's just something where everyone can laugh and be like, yeah, that's me. Or you're right. It gives so much more validity and authenticity to the person when they're real. And I think that's why I laugh about that Instagram perfect world, because
Yeah.
that's actually not what I want to see. I don't want to see someone whose life is perfect, because my first question is, if I see a beautiful person, male, female, whoever it is, on a video, the first thing I'm thinking is there's got to be a filter there. There's no way there's no filter because it's just too perfect, right? So instantly you're questioning the authenticity of what they're doing. Where you see someone who's in their pajamas running away from a spider or whatever it is and hitting a door on their way out, that's real life. That's so, I love that.
Yeah,
I
especially
really
for me, I talk about money and it's an uncomfortable topic as it is. So if I really want to teach people about investing, about real estate and tax liens and all the things we talk about, I want them to know that I'm a real person and that they can relate to me because then they think it's possible, right? Maybe it's possible I can invest. Maybe it's possible I can create wealth. Maybe I can retire someday because this person who seems pretty normal is able to do it too and has a great story. And now we're adding some humor to it so that money doesn't feel so strange or so hard or, like it's unattainable. But now I'm going to take a hard topic and throw some humor in it so that hopefully you're going to listen to me and then implement and take action on what I'm teaching.
right. Exactly. So you kind of talked about teaching people about money. Tell me, what do you think are some of the biggest like misconceptions about making money, about investing, about saving money, so that people can actually achieve financial freedom? Because I think that's a word that a lot of people throw around and they have no plan to actually get there.
Yeah, well, you first have to understand, what does that mean to you? What does that look like?
Mm.
And I like to paint pictures more than just write it down on a plan, right? So what does that look like to you? Are you vacationing? Are you paying off your house? What are some things that mean freedom to you? And then we work it backwards. So when you have that end goal in mind, then you can work it backwards and come up with a good plan. The other thing is I hear people say, oh, I don't need money. But you forget about everything that's around you. You forget about your family and how you can impact them and help change their lives for generations. You forget about the charity that you might be volunteering at. It's a business, they need money. You forget about your church. It's also a business, they need money. So you have to think about all of the things around you that you're going to impact when you do create more wealth for yourself, instead of thinking selfishly, like, I don't need more money. Well, perhaps you don't, but everybody around you could probably use some help. And if you accomplish what you're doing, they're going to ask you questions. You get a chance to teach them. And it's amazing how many lives you can impact around you just from small steps that you're doing in your own life, because they're always paying attention.
Absolutely. You said something before that I think is so key. You were talking about the people that you surround yourself with and how you enjoy not being the smartest person in the room. And I say all the time, my favorite place to be is to be the dumbest person in the room, because that's where I learn, that's where I grow. When I am in a group of people where I tend to know the most, it's actually exhausting in a way, because you're then the one that's sharing all the information, and you do want to help others, you do want to be able to share, but at the same time, you're like, I'm not learning anything. And knowledge is a currency, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with knowledge when you actually have the ability to use it as a tool. And I think that networking, that mentorship, whether it's coaching, whatever it is, people want to get to these places. They have no idea where to start, yet somehow in their mind, they believe, I'm going to get there. But they have no idea what they're doing, which generally means that they're never going to take step one. Talk to me a little bit about your experiences with mentorship, with networking, and the impact that it had on your success.
Yeah, and just being honest with yourself when you're hiring a mentor or a coach, you obviously need help in some area. And so when you're honest with that coach and with that mentor about, I just don't know what I don't know. And then they have a good understanding of what to teach you. So if you're not honest in your relationship and your questions and your answers to that mentor or coach, then they really can't help you and you're not ready to be helped at that point. So don't spend the money on it. But I've always had mentors and coaches. Everything I've done, from financial advising to real estate to insurance to podcasting, I've always had a mentor, because I want to learn from their mistakes. They've done things that I haven't done yet. And if I can learn from what they've made mistakes, then I'm just going to accomplish those goals so much quicker. And I know that sounds like it's like something up in the air in fairyland or something like that. But it's asking questions and being honest with yourself and allowing for yourself to make mistakes and to go through that transition. Because when things are hard or uncomfortable or you get like anxiety around it, it's because you're growing, and knowing that that's what's happening in that moment, instead of retreating, just kind of moving forward through that feeling that you're having. It's just incredible, the breakthroughs that you can have. And then you get to celebrate with your coach. I love being able to coach people and watching them like have those big breakthroughs and celebrating with them. And then I'm there, if they fall down, I'm like, all right, well, get up, let's do it again.
Right. Absolutely. And I think sometimes too, people think, oh, a coach shows a sign of weakness, right? That I can't do it. But you're already admitting you have the weakness, right? Get over your own weakness. That's how you have to move forward. I was just listening to a podcast today with Gary Berdecka, and he had Dana White on, who runs UFC. And Gary completely sent Dana on a quest, I guess you could say, to really improve his health.
Mhm.
Dana White is surrounded by, first of all, super rich guy, right? Owns a UFC, worth tons and tons of money. So for many people, they have that thing in their mind of, well, if you have tons of money, you can just have everything you want. But you can't have your health unless you're actually coached and being able to get what you're looking for.
Mhm.
And it was amazing hearing Dana talk about his interactions with Gary and how Gary, in a 10-week time frame, completely changed his life. And I just don't think people respect the idea of the coach. Everyone loves to see, the Tom Brady's of the world and these amazing, quarterbacks, basketball players, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe, whoever it is. But every one of those people had a coach. And no one tends to think of it that way, but there's nothing wrong with utilizing a coach. You're literally borrowing their knowledge. Like if you
Yeah.
just look at it that way, that's knowledge that might take you 10 or 20 years to accumulate. And they're going to give it to you in a very short amount of time with a very specific path. So I agree with you. I don't think people truly respect the power of coaching and how it can change your life in such a short amount of time.
Yep. And I have multiple coaches. So it's amazing that you talked about Gary. I am on 10X Health, and I will tell you, it has
Oh,
made a huge impact for me. Cold plunging, if you haven't done it, for someone who has
yeah.
awful inflammation like I do, is incredible. I wrote this book behind me, Empower Your Money, bestseller last year. James Malinchak was my coach for that. Launched my podcast, John Lee Dumas, with Entrepreneurs on Fire. He's my coach for podcasting. So even in this, space of my life, I still have multiple coaches because I want to learn. I want to teach other people, but I've got to learn first. So I love that story about Gary and Dana, because you're right. You think they're super successful, but there's still a coach behind them helping them with some aspect of their life so they can continue on this path of being successful.
Absolutely. Talking about continuing success, right? Everyone wants to start step one and they want to work towards their goals. One thing I've learned, even in my own experiences, is that hitting those milestone and hitting those goals that you generally are dying to hit, you want to hit so bad, as soon as you hit them, it's actually quite unfulfilling. And the
Mhm.
next thing you're instantly looking for is, what is my next quest? What pursuit am I going after next? Talk to me a little bit in your experience. How do you stay motivated, stay driven, especially during, I mean, even for the most successful people, times are not always easy. You have those tough times, you have those periods where you start to doubt yourself, question yourself. How do you stay motivated and driven, especially in times when progress kind of seems a little slow?
Yeah, if I get in that state of mind, I'm looking for ways to add value to other people's lives. So it could be as simple as picking up the phone and calling either my clients or friends or family and say, hey, what are you struggling with right now and how can I help you? Because for me, that's more fulfilling than earning another dollar. I also do a lot of charity work. And so if I can utilize my years of knowledge and expertise and give it to a charity, that's very fulfilling for me because I have a gift and I'm able to share it not just with people who are paying for my services or investing with me, but now I can go to a charity board and help them, grow their podcast or reach more people through marketing because I have some expertise in that area. So for me, when I'm feeling kind of down or I'm not quite feeling quite fulfilled, I find ways to give back. And there's all these opportunities all around you. If you really truly look, there are so many charities that need help, not necessarily money, but just time and value from your own brain and knowledge and expertise. And then there's people around you who are afraid to ask questions. So if you reach out to them and say, hey, how can I help you? You're opening the door and allowing for them to feel comfortable to ask you some of those questions that they were thinking about because they see what you're doing, but they don't necessarily want to take time for you or they're scared to ask questions. So I like to add value and I get a lot more fulfillment from that than making another dollar.
Absolutely. I know you have pivoted quite a bit into really looking in helping people invest, what they can do with their money, how they can make their money work for them. Talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you offer and some of the ways that you help your clients.
Yeah. So I think like you hit on the nail on the head earlier is people think that investing is this big scary or they just don't understand it, right? So I like to sit down and figure out, obviously we've already gone through what are your expenses, what are your income, how much money do you have left to invest? Now let's talk about what kind of investor are you? Are you conservative? Are you 20? Are you 50? So figuring out what your time frame is, how much you have to invest and what kind of investor is really important because then I can share the things and the projects that I'm working on. So from residential real estate to commercial real estate to tax lien investing to short-term notes. Like these are all terms that I can go over with people and kind of teach them about different avenues and see where they're most comfortable at. And then I can help advise them on which avenue, might be best. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't do the stock market for clients. I leave that to a different licensed professional. But I know a lot about real estate and a lot about real estate investing. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. And so when we can break down what kind of investor you are, then we can start looking at what are the different avenues that might make sense for you. Because I'm not going to, what we used to call in the banking world, product pop. Oh, here's this shiny object. Here's this shiny object. I never want to be that person, because if you lose money, I want you to truly understand what the risks are and what you got into before you even write a check or put a penny towards anything.
I think one of the biggest excuses that people kind of come up with when it comes to investing is, oh, I just don't know what the markets are like right now. I don't know what the real estate market's like right now. It's an election year. There's so much uncertainty. Talk to me about your feelings about combining the words uncertainty with actually the word opportunity, because I think they're two words that people tend to not think go together, but dive into that a little bit for me. What's your insight on that?
I was going to first say, turn off the news. No.
Yes. Just for your mental health, turn off the news.
I know, because the news is meant to scare you. And those are all the words that the news is using. I hear it right now, obviously, with what all is going on, but I don't know half the stuff that's going on in the news because I just choose not to watch it. Nothing that really is happening is going to make a huge impact on me right now. And so one of the things we talk about is kind of unpacking all of that. What are you really nervous about, and where is that coming from? And then understanding that no matter what market we're in, there's always going to be a good opportunity for something, but you have to pick a lane and really learn about that lane and then figure out how to find opportunities in that lane. Because any day of the week, any time of the week, there's going to be an opportunity no matter what market we're in every single type of lane. But figuring out what the lane is first and learning about it, and then figuring out what does an opportunity look like in that category, so that we can just focus on one place so it's not so scary and overwhelming, and just really get educated on that one area first, become a master or stay in that lane, and then we can go out from there. But just one thing at a time. Let's keep it really simple.
Right. I know you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different clients who've really benefited people in so many different ways. Do you have that one client success story that still makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up and just be like, ah, this was one that just absolutely floored me?
Yeah, this is probably early on when I used to teach Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, which is a good program for some people. Obviously, where I'm at and where I teach is not what I do anymore. But I had this one young lady, and she was just so far in debt. And I just want to file bankruptcy at 22 years old. And so, what was great about her is that she was willing to put in the work and really understand what her income was, what her expenses were. She ended up getting a roommate to cut back expenses. And she was so scared to go to her parents to ask for money because she felt like she was a failure. And so after 6 months of working with her, we got her out of debt. We got her way down. And then she had this story to be able to tell her parents. And she felt just so proud. And I was excited to be part of that journey with her, where she went to her parents and said, hey, I was in a really bad spot and I didn't want to ask you for money. This is why I couldn't come home, because I couldn't afford the plane ticket. And I didn't want to ask you for help because I felt just so ashamed of what I let happen in my life. And from that, I came through, right? I went through this journey. I had someone that helped me, and I learned so much about myself and about money. And now I'm investing for my retirement. She was a nurse at a hospital, so they had a great plan for her to be able to put money aside and for them to match it. And she learned about overtime and how to pick positions based on pay, and then really get to know the options that were available for her investing. But at such a young age, to feel like a failure and not be able to go to your parents, it just broke my heart. And so working with her and her really taking the action and taking a hold of things and getting through that entire process, coming out the other side and saying, hey, mom, dad, look at me now. And so that feeling to be able to help someone, especially at such a young age, was just so fulfilling. And knowing that you've just changed her life forever.
You know, when we started talking today, we talked a bit about almost the rags to riches story, right? You started out in a welfare situation, wound up where you are today, which your, journey has just been incredible. Dive into me a little bit though, how you kind of moved through those initial first steps. You're in a situation where poverty is normal. I will never forget, I had on Dustin Kukowski recently on the podcast, and In 4 years, he's gone from having $0 to owning $100 million roofing business.
Mm.
And what's amazing is that Dustin was homeless at 14, living on a park bench, grew up in a home where it was a drug abused home, just a really, really difficult time. And it was an incredible conversation with him. Talk to me a little bit about how you take where you were. Everyone worries about starting at zero. No one thinks about starting at less than zero, right?
Mhm.
It's a difficult, like you get to the point where you just want to feel normal. Never mind having riches and just all these dreams. You just want to feel like everybody else. Can you kind of walk me through that process and what you had to go through to do that?
Yeah, and I think that's an incredible story. I think sometimes, and I've been told that coming from less than nothing or coming from nothing sometimes is an advantage over people who may have had some money in their childhood, right? Because I didn't know any different, right? So failure for me didn't mean that I was going to be homeless. I've already been there, done that. So that fear kind of wasn't there for me early on. And what I learned is I was running away from poverty for a long time. And so that was my driver. I did not want to have to ask for money. I did not want to go to the government and have them give me a check so that I could eat food. And so that was always a driver for me. And it really had to be a mindset shift and the acceptance that what happened to me wasn't who I was, but I had the opportunity to change who I am today going forward. And so people sometimes will play that like victim mentality, right? I don't want to be a victim. I am going to take control of my life today, and I'm going to be the one that helps make it better tomorrow. And when you understand that you have that kind of power over yourself and over your life, looking around you and figuring out, how do I make that happen? When I decided that in my heart, I wanted something different, and I tell myself that and I make it visual in my life, then your brain looks for those opportunities. And what happens too for me is looking for those opportunities. I had to be able to push myself a little bit to get uncomfortable to ask those questions. It took me 5 years to get through college, but I did community college first. I did regular college. I worked 3 jobs nonstop. I didn't allow for outside distractions because I had bills to pay. And I knew I wanted something more, and I knew that I could accomplish it, but it was going to take some hard work, right? And I had to get through that. And it wasn't until my daughter was born that really shifted things for me. When she was born, I lived in a neighborhood in San Diego where Domino's Pizza would not even deliver to my house. And I thought about, is this what I want for her? Do I want her to repeat the cycle that I went through? No. And I had to be the one to break that pattern. So it really is a conscious effort to be different, to act different, to learn more. We live in this age where there's so much information that's available for you. You just have to take the time, and it's on you to take the action. But making sure the right people are in your life is also huge and key. We talked about the mentors and the coaches. It's also your family, it's your friends. Look around you. Are those people uplifting you? Are they helping you to grow? Because if they're not, you're in a cage. And if you visually think about that, I heard that quote recently and that hit home for me, because a cage is someone who's stuck, right? They can't get past those bars in front of you. Well, I don't want to be in a cage. I don't want to live my life like that. So, how do I get out from under that? Is choosing what's around me and choosing my action and choosing what I'm going to do every day, but also choosing my attitude. And that's something that I've had to work on a lot. It's just that abundance mindset. I deserve more. I can earn more. It takes my effort to do that, but get out there and take the action with the knowledge that you're learning from everything that's around you. That was a really long explanation.
No, that was fantastic. It reminds me so much today. We have, a younger generation today, kids that are in their early to late 20s. They're facing a lot of struggles that I feel like maybe we didn't even have growing up at that age. I think one of those struggles is, you know, their drive to be able to have personal responsibility a little bit. You know, they kind of get a bad rap for they're lazy, they're entitled, things like that. I don't know if that's necessarily fair.
Mhm.
What I do think is happening is that they've been provided for a very long time. No one wants to hear this is actually a parenting problem, but in many cases it actually is.
Mhm.
And you brought up something so pivotal about the circle of people that are around you. I don't know if you've heard the story of the ant, the Sharpie, and the white paper.
No.
And it's fascinating. If you take an ant, a little, insect, you put it on a piece of white paper and you take a black Sharpie and you draw a circle around that ant, it will not leave the circle
Hmm.
because it has no idea what's on the other side of that line. However, if you pick the ant up and put it outside the circle, it will roam free. We draw our own circles for what we think we can accomplish, what we think we're worth, what we think we can actually do. And then we let the people around us draw a circle as well. And it just reinforces oftentimes our own circle of this is who I am. This is going to be my life. This is what I'm going to be. I'm going to live in my parents' basement until I'm 40 years old because I have student loans to pay off and the jobs that I'm working are only paying $20 an hour and I'm never going to move forward.
Hmm.
Have you worked with people like that? And how do you get people to have that mindset shift? Because it's literally going to affect an entire generation.
Yeah, I love this question. My daughter is 20 and looking for her motivation has been tough. And she got to grow up in an abundant lifestyle. She did not have what I, went through as a child. And so I talk to employers about this too, because I do hear that, the kids are lazy, they're younger, they don't want to do stuff. I don't think that that's the case. What I think is they have a different value system. They no
Mm.
longer think of the American dream as, earning a lot of money, buying a house, having a family. No, my daughter wants to travel the world. So she's like, how do I make that happen on the least amount of money? Because money is no longer important to her because she grew up in a different lifestyle, right? And so she understands that things cost money. But I think as an employer, as a parent, you have to figure out what their motivation is. And it's a whole different generation that doesn't think like we did. And they didn't go through what we did. They have all of this information at their fingertips where we had to work to go get information, to find a mentor, to go to a library to read a book where they could have it in 2 seconds on their phone.
Yeah.
So their whole shift of the abundance of information without having abundance of money, it's just a whole different dynamic. So when you figure out what their motivator is, and it's not money most times, then you can kind of tap into their why and how to motivate them, especially as an employer, as a parent, to get them to do what we want them to do. You have to figure out what it is that's so much different about their generation than our generation. And the want and that desire is so much different. They just don't want that abundance. And I think
Right.
that's where it's coming from. And that's what I see a lot with the kids today. And it doesn't mean they can't be hard workers. They're just going to work hard for a different reason.
Yeah, definitely. I actually heard recently a study was talking to employers about why do they not want to hire Gen Z? Because many of them don't. And in the end, actually, the answer was surprising to me. It had nothing to do with laziness, work ethic, productivity, nothing like that. And it kind of threw me for a loop when I heard the answer, but it did make a lot of sense. They said that there's a concern of number one, loyalty to the company because the that Gen Z age group doesn't have a lot of the responsibilities that we had necessarily. So when we were 25 years old, we either had an apartment or we had a house, we had a car payment, we had these obligations that we couldn't pick up and leave our job on a moment's notice because we had rent or we had a mortgage or we had a car payment, we had insurance to do. And now with so many kids not wanting, as you said, those things aren't important to them anymore. The home ownership isn't as important anymore. Getting out on their own and moving out. I couldn't wait to move out when I was, ready to do that. I was like, I'm out of here. That's it. I'm gone. I want to live my own life where there's definitely been that mindset change there. And that's why actually many companies are not hiring Gen Z because it has to do with more of the fact of they can pick up and leave tomorrow. So if we're going to invest money in the training and the time to bring on new employees, That's a risk they may not be willing to take. It was a fascinating take on it. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, but they're missing out on so much of understanding that generation to be able to sell to that generation, the technology that's coming from that generation. I mean, as an employer, I would love to teach people. And the greatest gift to me is if they leave me someday to do something on their own. That's just the same as a parent. If your kid
Yes,
leaves you and they're successful on their own, then you've done your job. So that's sad that they're looking at it that way, because I would rather hire them, learn from them, have them help me, and have myself help them, and then they can go fly and do their own thing and be successful, and I helped on that journey. So that's kind of sad way to look at it, but it's a different perspective, I guess.
absolutely. I think part of the thing too is that, and I think we talked about turning off the news before, which is actually probably the best advice we could give anybody in today's society. But there's, in some ways, success is almost being villainized today.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing a lot of that victimhood that you talked about before, and that it's actually okay to stay in that victimhood world because they're selling the idea of scarcity. And honestly, this is something that I literally took from Grant Cardone's book, 10X, was that we're being sold this idea of scarcity, meaning if I'm successful, you can't be. Or if you're successful, I can't be, or someone else can't be. And that was one of the most shocking things in that book. It just opened your eyes to say, no, you know what? Just because someone else is successful has no impact whatsoever on whether or not I can be. How
Mhm.
do we start to change that mindset of people, of this scarcity idea of only certain people get to be successful? And I think, and I know you do it too, you interview amazing guests on your podcast. There's a lot of successful people out there that no one knows their name, no one knows who they are, but they're unbelievably successful. They're experts in their own field. And there is no limit on success if we allow ourselves to push ourselves to there. Give me your takes on that.
Yeah, I think the best way to change their mindset is to leave them alone, but show
Mhm.
them what you're doing. And so
Mhm.
when people start to see that you're being successful or that you've done something different, I think they talked about four stages. One is people are disbelieving. They don't think that you're going to ever change or that you're going to be able to do better. Two, when you start doing it, they're like, oh, you must be lucky. Three, they start paying attention to you and thinking, oh, well, maybe they know something. And then four is the fourth stage where they start to realize that you are doing something different, you are being successful, and now they're curious about it. So it just takes time for them to go through those stages, the disbelievers to go through those stages. So the best way for you to change their outlook is just to keep doing you. Keep being successful, keep pushing yourself, keep doing more things. And I am a big believer on social media. I know it's kind of the highlight reel, but I like to be authentic and show my failures too. But I just put it out there. And I think the more people see what I'm doing, knowing where I come from, now that I'm comfortable sharing my story, then they start to believe that it could be possible for them, but allowing them to go through that process and then for them to reach out when they're ready. Because if you try to change their mindset when they're not ready, you're going to get crickets and probably negativity. And I don't want negativity in my life. I don't give negativity to other people. So I'm not going to push them until I feel like they're ready and they start asking questions. Then I'm going to come out them with a hammer and be like, this is what you need to know. But they're not ready until they've reached out to me. So I just keep shining my light. And when they're ready, they're going to come to me. And then I'm coming at them full force.
I love that. I think for a lot of people, my dad was a bodybuilder. So I've grown up in a bodybuilding, where just bodybuilding was normal for my entire life. And I was very excited because this last weekend, I got to take my kids, my three boys, out to the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic in Columbus, Ohio. I get to interact with a lot of really amazing bodybuilders, get them to, be able to see the show. And it's funny because I remember my dad took me almost 25 years ago, for the
Mhm.
first time. And it was great as a dad to then be able to do that with my boys. But what I noticed while I was there is my mindset changed on the admiration that I had for the bodybuilders. So when I was 20, I was admiring the physiques themselves. And, big biceps, big chests, all these things, these guys that were just in fantastic shape. This time, what I found myself admiring was not the physiques. It was the underlying thing that things that were required to achieve those physiques.
Mm.
So it was admiring the discipline, the consistency, the hard work, and the resilience that they had to put in order to do what they did. And it was just a notable thing that I picked up on while I was there. I was like, wow, my total mindset of these guys that, when Arnold Schwarzenegger would walk in the room, I was mesmerized by just the presence of Arnold. Now I'm mesmerized by the resilience and the consistency that he's had. And I think take bodybuilding away from it and now insert anyone, whether it's Tony Robbins, it's Grant Cardone, it's a podcaster, it's an author, whatever it is. What I'm finding is I admire what it took to get that person to that point or to complete whatever project or whatever thing that they accomplished. Definitely, it was a change for me. It was a neat experience.
Yeah, you're in a different place in your life. So now you're ready to, get information that's different to you than when you were there before. So yeah, that's amazing story.
And at nearly 50, I never have to worry about thinking that I'm ever going to have a physique like Arnold Schwarzenegger again. So I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Hey, it's possible. Gary Breck is in great shape. Dana
Yes, he
Whiteback is in
is.
amazing shape. So it's possible.
That is true. That is true. As we start to wind down here a little bit, I'd love to know in your own personal growth, your own personal journey, were there any books, podcasts, resources that you really used to kind of start your path or propel yourself forward?
Yeah. So for me, coming from the childhood that I did, mindset was really important. And I became a huge student of Tony Robbins. He talks about mindset and he gives you real things that you can do in your life and really challenges you. I went to Unleash the Power Within, which is 14 hours, several days long, and you never think that you can do it until you're doing it. So for me, having the mindset issue, I know it's something I'm going to work on forever. It's just never going to be something that comes easy to me, and I understand that about myself. So the mindset for me was Tony Robbins. There was a book called The Traveler's Gift, and I forget who, Andy Andrews, he wrote that book. And there's a section in there that talks about choosing to be happy. So I'm very conscious about my mindset. I've already said that, but I'm also very conscious about choosing to be happy because people don't like to learn from negative people. If you're
Mm.
an unhappy person, they're not going to listen to your story. They're not going to absorb what you have to teach them. So if it's my mission and gift to teach people about money, I need to work on my mindset and I truly want to be a happy, positive person. So it's something else that I work on. So like the beginning part of my day, I start by quiet. I journal. I have a gratitude journal and I talk about all the things in my life that I'm grateful for, from like the grass to the sun to a house. And then I end my day on a positive note. I've already told you I don't watch Hulu or Netflix or anything, but I do have the free version of YouTube and I watch funny videos. So it could be people falling or cats or dogs or impractical jokers. I'm very controlling about what comes into my brain so that my output can be the best version of me so that I can truly impact people with the gift that I believe God has provided to me.
I love that. Tell me a little bit too. You noted it before, but you are a best-selling author of your book, Empower Your Money. So tell me a little bit about the book and where can people get it?
Yeah, Empower Your Money is the name of the book. My coach gave me some keywords that people search for. And what I wanted to give you 101 steps that you could walk away today and implement. It's not a big fancy book with lots of definitions. It's invest in yourself. It talks about how to budget. It gives you websites to go to for different parts of your life and your journey. And I just want it simple. I want to give you something very easy to start you on your journey so that when you feel like you don't know where to start, here's a book, got some action items. Now that you've passed that, you have some financial knowledge. Now keep going on that. And the book is on Amazon. So it was so much fun just to put some thoughts to paper. And when you hear people say, oh, I did, step number 7, which is a no spend day, and you hear that they got a result from it, it's so incredible to know that you impacted someone in a way with their money when they were scared to do something before. But I just wanted it easy and simple. And that's the way money should be approached, is start with some of the basic stuff first, and then you can build on it. Where I'm at today was not where I was when I was 18 and just starting on this journey. And even if you're 30 and just starting on the journey, or 50 and just starting on the journey, keep it simple to start so you don't get overwhelmed, so that you will continue on that journey and continue to learn.
I love that. For people to learn more about you, your coaching programs, and everything that you're doing today, which is just honestly fantastic, and you're being able to help people all over the world, how do people find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram and TikTok, it's Empower Her Money. And if you message me money on Instagram, I'm going to send you a quiz, which is going to help you figure out what kind of investor you are. Like we talked about, pick a lane. I want to help you figure that out first before you dive deeper. And then Facebook and LinkedIn, it's Angela Duncan.
Awesome. And for all the podcast listeners, as always, all of Angela's links will be in the podcast description. So make sure you go there to check them out. Angela, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know I've learned a lot, and you're just a very inspiring and empowering person, hence the title of the book. And it's been fantastic having you on the show. Thank you so much for being a guest here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into Empower Her Money podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review wherever you are tuning in.